What if the most promising quarterback in Cleveland isn't being benched because he's not ready, but because someone won't let him compete? What if this isn't a quarterback controversy, it's a power struggle? Inside the Browns organization, something is boiling. And for once, it's not just about play calls, depth charts, or film sessions. It's something deeper, louder, more dangerous. A behind-the-scenes clash of egos, motives, politics, and silence that speaks louder than any press conference ever could. For weeks, fans watched in disbelief as game after game slipped away, slow starts, broken plays, and game plans that led nowhere. But that frustration, it wasn't just about losing. It was about confusion, mixed signals, decisions that didn't make sense. And then, one sentence changed everything. At first glance, it sounded like harmless praise. Head coach Kevin Stefanski complimented his backup quarterback's practice performance, called it strong, mentioned red zone timing. It should have stopped there, but it didn't, because that one compliment confirmed what fans had whispered for weeks, that Shedeur Sanders, the rookie drafted to lead this franchise into the future, might already be better than the guy on the field. So now, the question isn't if Sanders is ready. It's why he's being held back and who's responsible. This isn't just about quarterbacks anymore. It's about control, trust, and whether the Browns are once again spiraling into a drama they can't escape. And what happens next might define the future of the entire franchise. No one expected Kevin Stefanski to say it. In fact, most people assumed that press conference would be more of the same, a bit of coach speak, a few vague statements about execution, and maybe a line or two about staying the course. By this point in the season, every appearance felt like recycled messaging, controlled, measured, forgettable. But that day was different. Stefanski stepped to the mic with the usual calm in his voice, but there was a weight to his words, a type of restraint that didn't feel random. And then, without being asked, he dropped the line that shifted the landscape of Cleveland football. Shedeur had one of his best practice weeks so far. His timing sharp, decision-making is improving, and his red zone work has been really impressive. 17 words. That's all it took. 17 words that flipped a switch across the entire Browns universe. The media didn't interrupt. There were no immediate follow-up questions. Reporters in the room stayed quiet, almost stunned. It didn't sound like a typical throwaway comment. It sounded like something else entirely. It sounded intentional, because weeks of silence had just been shattered by a sudden acknowledgement of the player fans were begging to see. Not in the preseason, not in next year's rebuild, but now in the middle of a crumbling season, with momentum gone and trust fading. And the most important takeaway wasn't what Stefanski said. It was what he didn't. He didn't mention Gabriel's name. He didn't clarify who would start Sunday. He didn't establish a timeline or even a depth chart. There was no commitment, no clarity, just a single quote surrounded by silence. And that silence became louder than anything else. Online, the reaction was immediate. Clips of the quote were reposted across fan forums and Twitter feeds like wildfire. National NFL shows began the next day's coverage with a question that hadn't been asked out loud until that moment. Is this Cleveland's turning point? But inside the Browns organization, it wasn't excitement that was spreading, it was pressure. Because words like that don't happen by accident in the NFL. Coaches don't compliment the backup quarterback mid-season unless something is shifting. Backup praise signals transition. Everyone who's been in a locker room, around meetings, or inside stone-cold front offices knows it means someone is preparing to pull a trigger. And that's why Stefanski's calm delivery felt so heavy. Because it didn't calm anything, it set something off. Suddenly, a quiet quarterback debate turned into a franchise-wide conversation. One that wasn't just playing out in fans' minds, but in live broadcasts, newspaper columns, locker room whispers, and scouting meetings. Was this praise a setup? A smokescreen? A way to manage backlash without actually making a move? No one knew for sure, but everyone, all at once, understood one thing. The Browns could no longer act like there wasn't a decision coming. For fans, frustration turned into suspicion. They weren't upset that Sanders had been developing behind the scenes. That's expected for rookies. What stunned them was the implication that he'd been performing well for a while. And if that was true, why was he still standing on the sideline with headphones instead of shoulder pads? The logic didn't line up. Week after week, the Browns' offense stalled. Gabriel looked uneasy in the pocket. Drives died inside the red zone. Rhythm never arrived. And the whole time, Sanders, Cleveland's most talked about rookie since Baker Mayfield waited. Quietly, patiently, almost too patiently. Now, those optics weren't just questionable, they were suspicious. If he's making strides, if he's showing readiness, if he's doing everything asked of him behind the curtain, why was he still behind it? Speculation gave way to theory. Theory became frustration, and frustration started to look a lot like mistrust. Fans felt it, analysts felt it, but more dangerously, the players started feeling it too. Something unspoken began to take hold in the locker room. Not an outburst, not a rebellion, but a type of quiet unrest. The eyes during practice started shifting. Players paid closer attention to reps. Body language started telling stories the staff didn't. Receivers lingered near Sanders in warm-ups. Linemen adjusted timing drills with him. Subtle things. Little cues. But in the NFL, those little moments mean everything. And right there at that moment, Stefanski's words had done exactly the opposite of what they were probably meant to. They didn't bring order, they introduced doubt. They didn't calm the storm, they changed the wind's direction. Because when the head coach praises a player fans haven't seen, at the exact time pressure is peaking, on the exact week the offense looks broken, you don't need a scoreboard to see what's coming. You can feel it. The quarterback conversation in Cleveland had officially left the fans and entered the facility, not as whispers, not as rumors, but as inevitability. And the moment Stefanski spoke those words, the entire narrative shifted forever. It's not just strange anymore, it's starting to feel deliberate. Shedeur Sanders is reportedly outperforming expectations in practice. Timing sharp, footwork improving, processing speed accelerating. The head coach himself said so. Reporters confirmed it. Teammates have hinted at it. Videos of practice footage, even limited clips, show flashes of promise that can't be denied. And yet, week after week, game after game, there he is. Standing, helmet off, headset on, watching from the sideline like a passenger on a train that keeps derailing in slow motion. Not warming up, not rotating in, not getting situational snaps. Just watching like he's not even part of the story. At least, not yet. What started as a normal rookie has to earn it scenario has taken a sharp turn into something much darker, more complicated, more frustrating, because now it doesn't feel like a decision based on development. It feels like a refusal to acknowledge reality. If he's doing everything right behind the scenes, if he's truly progressing and impressing the coaches, then why is he still being treated like a placeholder? The disconnect is glaring, not just to fans, but to everyone. Let's talk about Gabriel. He's not a villain, not the scapegoat, but he's also not leading this team anywhere, not right now. The offense has consistently looked stuck under his control. Short yardage throws, hesitation, inconsistent drives, critical red zone stalls that have haunted the scoreboard week after week. It's not that Gabriel is incapable, it's that he's no longer convincing. No fire, no rhythm, no momentum, and no sign that it's going to magically turn around. And during all of this, Shedeur has stayed silent, respectful, focused, a rookie doing things the right way. No complaints, no drama, no public statements, just preparation, just poise, waiting for a moment that feels less like it's being evaluated and more like it's being delayed, on purpose. Because here's what fans are starting to believe and what many inside the building quietly agree with. This isn't discipline, this is politics. You don't burn first-round hype. You don't spend a high pick on a quarterback with a national fan base, a marketable name, and enough upside to change your franchise's identity unless you have a plan. And yet, no one can figure out what the plan even is anymore. Fans are exhausted, not because they're impatient, but because the mixed messaging is driving them crazy. They've watched other teams pivot fast, adjust, take risks, develop on the fly. In Cleveland, it feels like they're waiting for permission to do what's already obvious. Play the kid. The fan base has reached a breaking point, not off speculation, but off real-time evidence. Because every incomplete pass from Gabriel is now met with groans, eye rolls, and audible chants. Every trip to the red zone without a touchdown feels like stolen time. And every glance toward the sideline that ends in Shedeur Sanders standing still feels like a choice made long before this season even kicked off. There's a growing belief among insiders, analysts, even casual viewers that Shedeur isn't just being eased in. He's being held back. That this isn't coaching, it's crisis management. That Stefanski, under increasing scrutiny, is trying to balance optics, locker room politics, and front office pressure all at once, and in that juggling act, the best quarterback on the team might be sitting for reasons that have nothing to do with football. Maybe it's fear of backlash. Maybe it's resistance from veterans in the locker room. Maybe it's a tug-of-war between front office vision and coaching comfort zones. But one thing it's definitely not is transparent. Because had Stefanski never said what he did publicly, had he stayed silent just one more week, fans might have accepted that Sanders was just developing. They may have stayed patient. But that quote, that praise, it changed everything. Now that the curtain has been pulled back just a little, the entire organization is under the microscope. Every press conference, every rep, every post-game comment. It's not about hope anymore. It's about accountability. If this kid is the future, if he's outworking expectations, if he's bringing the energy that the veterans notice and respect, then what's the holdup? This is the moment when fans stop asking calmly and start demanding answers. Cleveland isn't just waiting on a quarterback decision. They're waiting to find out if the people running this team even know how to make one. And with every glance at the sideline, one message keeps getting louder. This isn't a debate anymore, it's a delay. And eventually, delays come with consequences. At first, fans thought it was patience. A rookie sitting behind a more experienced QB while learning the system? That's normal. Hell, it's tradition in some organizations. Let the veteran start. Let the kid develop in the background. No complaints there. But then the stories started to leak. Quiet at first. A tweet here. A whisper from a reporter there. Hints that something behind the scenes wasn't adding up. And finally, one report pulled the curtain all the way back and it changed everything. According to multiple insiders who'd seen the Browns' practice structure up close, this was never a true competition. Not even close. Not a split in reps. Not a rotating evaluation. Not a fair fight. This was a one-sided performance disguised as a developmental process. From red zone sets to 2-minute drills to first-team walkthroughs, Gabriel got it all. Every meaningful snap, every live rep with the starters, every opportunity to build rhythm with the top weapons on the roster. And Shedeur? Scout team duty, running simulations for the defense, mimicking other quarterbacks, practicing against Cleveland's starting defense instead of building chemistry with his own offense. Not game scripting, not play installs, not live reads with the playmakers he'd play with on Sundays. Just reps to keep him warm, but never ready. That's when the tone shifted. Because this didn't look like a rookie who wasn't ready. It looked like a quarterback who was never allowed to get ready. The kind of planning that doesn't evolve from week to week. The kind that's locked in, protected, predetermined. At that point, fans weren't just upset, they were furious. You mean to tell us the future of the franchise was never even given a chance? Fans turned to former players, analysts, and insiders for answers. And what they found only amplified the reality. Veteran quarterbacks, from NFL legends to game managers turned broadcasters, all said the same thing. No quarterback can succeed without rhythm, and you don't build rhythm without first-team reps. It wasn't just favoritism, it was a setup. Behind closed doors, a phrase started circulating through NFL circles. One that someone from inside the Browns organization allegedly used when asked about the QB situation. It's not a competition, it's maintenance. That single sentence echoed louder than any quote Stefanski ever said from a podium. Maintenance. Not evaluation. Not opportunity. Not even development. Maintenance. As in, keeping a decision intact. As in, preserving a status quo they were too scared or too stubborn to challenge. So what does that mean exactly? It means every vague press conference was just noise. Every tweet about staying patient? Misdirection. The plan wasn't evolving. The outcomes weren't being earned. They were being protected. Protected from risk. Protected from change. Protected from controversy. And ironically, all that protection is now backfiring. Because you can only hold the truth down for so long before it finds a way to rise. But here's the part that really lit the match. The timing. That practice structure, the one where Gabriel took 100% of the game reps and Sanders was locked into bench duty, it didn't change after preseason struggles. It didn't shift after the offense sputtered early in the season. It only changed after the Jets game. Only after the boos. The chants. The media heat. And Stefanski's public praise that couldn't be taken back. That was when people inside the building started noticing something different. Suddenly, Shedeur was getting a handful of red zone reps. Suddenly, he was thrown into live drill sessions. Suddenly, he was conducting cadence checks with the first-team offensive line. After weeks, months of being locked onto the practice perimeter, the door cracked open, not because the coaching staff was ready, because they had no choice. And it was painfully obvious. The sideline vibe changed too. Players were paying attention, receivers running extra routes with Sanders, linemen making communication adjustments at the line, veterans on defense shifting glances every time he took a snap in scrimmage. What they saw? The ball came out quicker. The reads were cleaner. The offense, in flashes, looked different, not polished, not dominant, but alive. Unpredictable. Like someone was taking real reps, not prep reps, not scout team looks. Starter reps. And that's when the truth fully unraveled. Shedeur Sanders wasn't failing to compete. He was never given the tools to do it. This was never about readiness. It wasn't even about strategy. It was about control. Keeping the young, dynamic, controversial quarterback on the sidelines was never about saving him from mistakes. It was about avoiding a decision the coaching staff wasn't ready or willing to make. But by trying to silence a movement, they accidentally gave it a microphone. And now, everyone's listening. Not just fans in Cleveland, not just national media, everyone. Because once it becomes clear that an organization didn't want a controversy, the only thing worse than public pressure is the moment people realize you tried to fake the process to avoid it. And that's the storm the Browns are finding themselves in now. Not because they chose the wrong quarterback, but because they never even gave both of them a real chance. In the NFL, the locker room always knows first. Before the analysts, before the media blitz, even before the coaching staff admits it out loud. Players can feel momentum shift, they hear the whispers, they study the reps. And most importantly, they watch where trust is forming and where it's being lost. And recently in Cleveland, something's changed. Not with sound, not with statements or sideline arguments, but with eyes, with body language. With the kind of quiet behavior that never makes headlines but means more than any press conference ever will. Because in football, reps are earned but belief, that's given. And across the Browns roster, belief is starting to drift. It started subtly. Receivers who barely spoke with Shedeur Sanders earlier in the season, now seen running routes with him after practice. Offensive linemen, quietly discussing cadence and pass protection adjustments during warm-ups. And perhaps most notably, defensive leaders, guys who traditionally stay away from offensive decisions, began dropping veiled comments in interviews. Some dudes just need a shot. You can see who's ready, doesn't take long. The energy changes when he's in there. None of it confrontational, but all of it intentional. These weren't random observations, these were signals, and players knew exactly what they were doing. Because for them, this isn't just a debate about who throws a better spiral or makes better reads. This is about leadership, command, poise, confidence. And every day in practice, every rep that Sanders actually gets to take, he's proving he's got it. The differences aren't hard to spot. Snap rhythm is snappier, the huddle energy lifts, the tempo becomes urgent again, not inconsistent, not robotic, not textbook perfect. But real. You can't fake that. And in competitive locker rooms where careers are short and windows are shorter, you don't waste time backing an arm. You back a presence. You follow the guy who makes you believe something is possible again. And over the last few weeks, that's exactly how Shedeur's been operating. But belief isn't the only thing moving, so is doubt, and you can see that in how players are reacting to the current starter. Gabriel's relationships on the team haven't soured publicly, but they've changed. Receivers walking back to the sideline with visible frustration. Linemen shaking their heads after drive-killing checkdowns. Subtle friction building, week after week, as stalled plays turn into stalled games. There's no mutiny here, no locker room rebellion. But there's definitely a split. Not everyone's on the same page anymore. Some guys still back Gabriel as the safe choice. They want to stick with the system, trust the process, avoid chaos. Others? They've seen enough. They want juice, movement, hope, and Sanders represents all of that even if he's still learning. But here's the thing. In the NFL, once a locker room starts tilting even slightly, it's nearly impossible to rebalance. Coaches can preach patience. Analysts can talk about sticking to the plan. PR departments can release statements about development timelines. But on the field, The players know who they trust, and every time a tight end looks just a split second early after a missed read, every time a veteran shakes his head and walks off without saying a word, every time a wide receiver leaks frustration to someone in media off the record, it's not just emotion, it's writing on the wall. And what makes this situation increasingly volatile is that players aren't just witnessing a slow-motion disaster, they're feeling its impact in real time. This isn't theoretical anymore. They're losing games, losing yards, losing drives, losing the trust that decisions are being made for the right reasons. And once they feel like politics is bleeding into performance, they check out. Because if they think the guy on the sideline gives them a better shot and they believe he's being held back for reasons that aren't football, you don't just lose games. You lose loyalty. And in a building like Cleveland's, where the quarterback carousel has been spinning out of control for over a decade, that's the last thing this franchise can afford. Even more dangerous? The silence. The longer Stefanski avoids making a decision, the more divided things feel. Players aren't shouting, they're watching, carefully, closely. Every quote, every rep, every sign of hesitation from leadership. Because when a team is fractured, not by talent, but by indecision, everyone notices. And in that kind of environment, morale starts to rot from the inside out. Right now, the locker room isn't blowing up, but it's watching. And in Cleveland, that might be even worse because the moment players stop believing the best guy is playing, that's the moment the real season ends. Not on the scoreboard, not in the standings, but in the silence between players, in the eye contact, in the shrug after a bad throw that says, "It didn't have to be like this." The fans may chant, the analysts may debate, the owner may apply pressure, but the locker room? It chooses long before anyone else is ready to admit it. And right now, it's starting to choose. Rumors in the NFL move faster than the football. One text from a scout, one off-record comment to a reporter, one anonymous quote dropped late at night on social media. And suddenly, the entire league smells smoke. Cleveland is living inside that fire right now. Because what started as casual speculation about a quarterback rotation has exploded into something much bigger. Questions about who's actually running the Browns, and whether Kevin Stefanski ever had full control of his team to begin with. According to league insiders, the walls inside Berea are starting to echo. Front office executives, coaches, player reps, PR staff. Everyone seems to be hearing a slightly different version of the same story, told in different corners of the building. Stefanski never wanted this fight. Ownership pushed the draft. The front office wants the rookie on camera. The coach wants job security, not headlines. None of it confirmed. All of it believable. Because when results vanish and patience burns out, truth and rumor trade places overnight. The most repeated version goes like this. During the draft process, the Browns' personnel department fell in love with Shedeur Sanders, the talent, the pedigree, the spotlight. They called it future insurance, a move that secured relevance for years. Marketing saw a new face for the franchise. Ticket sales saw dollar signs. Kevin Stefanski saw a ticking clock. He knew quarterbacks this famous don't wait quietly. He knew the moment the kid walked through the door, every throw in practice would be dissected. Every loss would be followed by the question, when does Sanders start? He also knew something else. Coaches don't survive quarterback controversies, they survive wins. So, while the front office dreamed of potential, Stefanski doubled down on stability. Stick with Gabriel, keep the veteran rhythm, delay the inevitable. Win now, explain later. On paper, it almost made sense. Until the losing started. Once the losses piled up, ownership began to stir. Reporters say calls were made, not fiery threats, just questions. Are we maximizing our investment? Why isn't the rookie getting looks? Is the offense being held back? Those subtle inquiries can ruin a season faster than turnovers. Because the moment the boss starts asking about personnel, every coach in the building feels the walls tighten. And that's exactly when the leaks began. Somebody within the organization, no one's sure who started feeding fragments to the media. Practice details, snap counts, even minor locker room temperature reads. Each snippet sharper than the last. They painted a picture of internal disagreement so specific it couldn't be guessed. It had to be told, which means someone inside wanted the story out. Soon, national outlets were quoting sources close to the situation. Sports talk panels devoted full hours to guessing whether Stefanski had lost his grip, and the phrase culture split started appearing beside words like franchise defining. Meanwhile, players already uneasy watched the circus spin around them. They didn't need to read every article to know what was happening. It was obvious. Every department was choosing sides. Front office staff believed the rookie represented Cleveland's future. Stefanski's assistants insisted Gabriel was still the safer bet. And ownership? Ownership wanted hope that could sell. The alignment that every healthy team needs had fractured into three competing clocks: future, present, and profit. By midweek, an unnamed league executive reportedly told a journalist, "The Browns aren't analyzing film, they're analyzing each other." Brutal, but fitting. Because this wasn't about X's and O's anymore. This was about ego. About who gets credit if the gamble works and who gets blamed if it doesn't. In fragile organizations, power struggles don't happen out loud. They leak through indecision, through strangely worded pressers, through delayed roster confirmations, through the way a coach names the starter at the last possible moment, as if looking for permission instead of confidence. Every small hesitation becomes evidence of confusion. And confusion, once public, becomes chaos. That's where Cleveland stands tonight. A locker room scanning for signals, a fan base thirsting for honesty, a coaching staff juggling narrative damage, and a front office checking social media trends before trusting its own instincts. And the cruel irony? All of them want the same thing: results. But instead of chasing them together, they're fighting each other for control of the steering wheel. So the whisper spreading through league circles now isn't, "Will Sanders start?" It's something colder. Who's really calling the shots in Cleveland? Because sooner or later, one of these sides will win the argument and the others will be blamed for everything that went wrong along the way. And when that happens, this won't look like a quarterback story anymore. It'll look like what it truly is: a franchise war, disguised as a depth chart decision. It's the kind of night Cleveland never forgets. Cold air, primetime lights, a fan base clinging to hope like a lifeline, and a matchup that wasn't supposed to mean much beyond morale. Browns versus Jets, a mid-season game suddenly carrying the weight of an ultimatum. The stadium felt different before kickoff. Not loud, not celebratory, tense. A kind of humming unease that spreads when an entire city senses it's about to witness either a turning point or a meltdown. Gabriel jogged through warm-ups wearing the same expression he always does: controlled detachment. Meanwhile, every time Shedeur Sanders appeared on the screen, even just tossing on the sideline, the crowd reacted as if hope itself was running sprints. They weren't cheering a backup anymore. They were cheering belief. When kickoff hit, energy poured out of the stands like static electricity. The Browns got the ball first. 3 plays later, they punted. Business as usual. Frustration building quietly. Early on, it wasn't a disaster, just dull. Gabriel completed checkdowns, handed off twice, managed short gains that stacked no momentum. Every drive looked identical: cautious, play-o calling, safe reads, no rhythm. Meanwhile, the Jets' defense, sensing indecision, began pressing receivers at the line, daring Cleveland to throw deeper. They never did. By the second drive, fans were murmuring. By the third, they were restless. By the fourth, they were angry. And then came the moment the season's narrative flipped on its axis. Late in the second quarter, third and manageable, midfield, a chance to regain flow. The play design sprang open perfectly. Slot receiver crossing, shallow, tight end, peeling free up the seam. A daylight red so obvious that everyone from the press box could see it. Gabriel saw it too, then hesitated. Pump faked once, twice, dropped his eyes, and dumped the ball to a running back 2 yards behind the line. Tackled instantly. The crowd didn't boo right away. It breathed all at once, like thousands of lungs realizing the same truth. Then came the sound that no head coach ever wants to hear in his own stadium. Shedeur, Shedeur, Shedeur. It started timidly. A few voix disparate for spark. Then louder. Then united. Within seconds, it was vibrating through the television broadcast, echoing under the commentary like an emotional chant of rebellion. Cameras found Stefanski arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes locked on the field, expression unreadable. They found Sanders' next helmet tucked at his hip, motionless, watching. No smirk, no eye roll, no anxiety, just readiness, quiet, composed, waiting. For a second, you could almost see it how simple it would be for Stefanski to wave him in. Change the tone, change the story. But he didn't. And the game went on exactly as before. After halftime, the chants dulled, replaced by a tired kind of silence. The Browns trailed by 1 possession, but it might as well have been 10. Every incomplete pass landed like another reason to doubt the plan. On the sideline, frustration turned, physical helmets slammed, glances exchanged, coaches shouting over headsets. You didn't need backstage access to sense the fracture. It was happening live, under the lights. Even the commentators started leaning into it. You can feel the tension down there. Fans clearly think the future is standing right behind Stefanski. And that was the moment Cleveland couldn't spin anymore. The illusion of control was gone. When the Jets stretched their lead to 2 scores near the end of the third quarter, the cameras captured shots that told the real story. Veterans staring at the ground, coordinators pacing, ownership figures leaning on the glass in their box. The system that was supposed to protect the organization from controversy had created a full-blown crisis live, national, and unavoidable. Then something subtle but powerful happened. Between drives, several offensive players quietly drifted toward Sanders. A receiver bumped fists with him. An offensive lineman talked through hand signals. One assistant even slipped a tablet into his hands, letting him scroll through defensive coverage snapshots. He wasn't being ignored anymore. He was being acknowledged. And Stefanski saw it. He didn't need to read tweets or post-game headlines. He could see belief shifting meters away from him. When leadership hesitates, players look for direction elsewhere. And that night, direction had a number and surname stitched on a sideline hoodie. The fourth quarter arrived with the kind of resigned tension that football cities know too well. The score still close enough for hope, but the energy already gone. Gabriel threw short of the sticks on third down again, and the offense jogged off. The crowd reacted less with outrage, more with fatigue. Nothing hurts a fan base like predictable disappointment. As the clock ticked under 4 minutes, cameras caught Sanders still standing near the coach, helmet in one hand, a moment of possibility, maybe final. But Stefanski stayed frozen. Gabriel finished the game. The Jets finished Cleveland. The final whistle didn't bring boos, it brought clarity. Players barely celebrated or scowled. They just walked to the tunnel, faces blank. Inside, reporters described an atmosphere thick enough to cut. Veteran voices that used to echo across the hallway now spoke in whispers. Everything felt interim, temporary, waiting, because deep down, everyone knew what that loss meant. It was no longer a conversation about schemes or growth or patience. It was proof, undeniable, televised proof that the Browns had been lying to themselves. The rookie wasn't a secret weapon. He was an ignored solution. And the longer the team refused to see it, the deeper the divide became. The next morning, the franchise woke to headlines it couldn't escape. Fans chant for Sanders as Browns collapse late. Locker room frustration surfacing in Cleveland. Quarterback controversy reaches breaking point. Even national analysts, usually cautious about pushing unconfirmed narratives, went all-in. The story had evidence now visual, emotional, collective. And for the first time, Stefanski's calm facade looked less like composure and more like avoidance. That night didn't just stain the standings, it stripped away illusion. It revealed an organization trying to protect itself from backlash and instead fueling it. It showed a team built on contradictions, a new era quarterback trapped in an old era mindset. And it forced everyone watching, from front office to fan base, to face the question they dodged for months. Did Cleveland lose because of performance or because of fear? Because fear keeps you clinging to what's safe even when it's failing. Fear makes leadership freeze while opportunity warms the bench. Fear turns process into paralysis. That's what the country saw that night. And you didn't need to know the playbook to understand it. The Browns weren't just defeated by the Jets. They were defeated by themselves. Every collapse has a beginning, and Cleveland's didn't start on a Sunday. It started under the bright lights of draft night, months before the boos, before the chants, before the headlines started using the word controversy. For most franchises, draft day is strategy. Scouts compare numbers, coaches talk fit, general managers juggle cap space. For the Browns, that night felt like a commercial. The cameras cut between fans holding signs that screamed "Prime Time 2" and executives smiling wider than they had in years. Then came the announcement that the team had selected Shedeur Sanders, the lightning rod quarterback whose name carried more social media momentum than half the league combined. The crowd roared, the internet melted, and inside the building, a line invisible to most outsiders quietly formed, the line between football decision and marketing decision. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just another draft pick. He was a phenomenon, a household name before his first pro snap. The son of Coach Prime, a living legend who'd turned college football into his personal stage. Cameras followed him everywhere. Interviews came with built-in drama. Merchandise sold before jerseys were even numbered. Drafting him wasn't like betting on talent. It was like buying stock in a narrative. For ownership and marketing departments, that was gold, a way to modernize the franchise, attract younger fans, capture national attention. For the coaching staff, it was a headache wrapped in confetti. Because when you draft a player the world already adores, you don't just inherit skill, you inherit expectation. That expectation came in waves. Wave 1, fantasy. Fans convinced themselves he'd step in, start instantly, and rescue a franchise addicted to heartbreak. TikToks, tweets, talk radio predictions, they all built the same mythology. Cleveland finally found the one. Wave 2, fear. Veteran quarterbacks suddenly realized the spotlight now belonged to someone who hadn't taken a professional snap yet. Whispered jokes about the prodigy in the room carried a nervous edge. Every bad throw by a starter became a referendum. Every good day by Shedeur felt like prophecy. Wave 3, fracture. Front office excitement crashed into coaching pragmatism. Ownership dreamed of storylines. Stefanski dreamed of clean pocket reads. Somewhere in that collision, communication began to blur. Most successful organizations avoid that trap. They pick an identity first, then find players who fit it. Cleveland tried to do both to chase present stability while selling future glory. Management sat in one camp whispering, "Let the kid lead." The coaching staff built another, insisting, "Not yet." Neither side was wrong, but together, they were poison. Because when philosophy splits, execution suffers. Stefanski worried about the locker room. A rookie as famous as Sanders pulls gravity. Every training camp becomes a media event. Veterans resent it. Leaders feel displaced. He wanted calm. The owners wanted cameras. So instead of building a process around unity, Cleveland built a maze of caution tape. Every decision went through layers. PR, front office, coaching approval, player optics. By the time those decisions hit the field, they felt sterile and nervous like football run by committee. Inside that maze, the three classic draft night contradictions formed. Vienna's expectation versus reality. Fans didn't buy development, they bought destiny. The team spoke patience, but the marketing team was selling highlight tapes. The message split before training camp even started. Ithnan. Existing QB dynamics. Gabriel loyal, workmanlike, understated was the kind of quarterback coaches love and fans tolerate. He had earned trust in the film room, not headlines on Instagram. Having Sanders walk in with spotlight privilege triggered quiet resentment across the depth chart. Respect was due to the vet, attention wasn't. Treese. Identity crisis. Was Cleveland trying to build for the next decade or chase a playoff berth right now? Every roster move since that night suggested both, and every mixed signal since then traces back to that indecision. The crazy part? None of it was malicious. Every group thought they were saving the franchise. The front office believed visibility equals viability. Get people watching, believing, buying. That's how small market teams stay relevant. The coaches believed preservation equals progress. Stabilize first, revolutionize later. The players just wanted clarity. Who's the leader we're following this season? But those competing motives ensured nobody got what they wanted. Draft night hype soon turned into a burden. When Sanders arrived at minicamp, cameras lined the fences. Every throw, slow emotion replayed. Every stumble turned into a headline. Teammates tried to act unaffected, but the aura around him changed tempo. The soundtrack of Cleveland football had shifted from testing practicality to celebrity spectacle. And for the first few months, the Browns managed to keep it tidy. Coaches emphasized development. The rookie played the role perfectly humble, steady, camera-ready, but uncontroversial. From the outside, it looked controlled. From the inside, it was quietly fermenting. Because even the best-written playbook can't fix misalignment. Every meeting, every interview, every cautious answer from Stefanski sounded like translation messages rewritten so each faction could hear what it wanted to hear. He's progressing meant, we're not starting him. We like where he's at meant, please stop asking. Layers of spin piled up until no one knew what statements were genuine anymore. And that's how the Browns built a perfect contradiction. A team promoting a revolution on social media while preaching patience on the field. Shedeur Sanders became a symbol, a marketing miracle, wearing a headset. Gabriel became a placeholder wearing pressure, and Stefanski became the reluctant referee between two futures colliding at full speed. Now, months later, with the season teetering, everyone sees what should have been obvious that night in April. Cleveland didn't just draft a player to fit its culture. It drafted a culture to fit a player. And when you do that, you don't just add spotlight, you invite storm clouds. The hype becomes heavier than the helmet. Every statistic becomes politics. Every incomplete pass becomes a headline. That's why the Browns feel trapped now, because they engineered their own trap. They built an identity before they had alignment. They sold certainty before they could deliver stability. And now they're paying for it the only way teams ever do publicly. Draft night was supposed to signal rebirth. Instead, it quietly framed the same story Cleveland's repeated for decades, believing they could fix their future through spectacle instead of structure. The moment the card with Sanders' name hit the commissioner's hand, Cleveland didn't just change its depth chart, it changed its destiny. Football teams like to claim they're all in it together. But inside the Browns building, togetherness now feels like a myth. 3 different agendas wearing the same uniform. On one side sits the coaching staff, led by Kevin Stefanski, tethered to the scoreboard. Every game is a review. Every loss, another line on a resume that ownership can use against him. For coaches, future plans don't exist. Survival means Sunday. Opposite them stands the front office, convinced that development is destiny. They're thinking about next season's ticket packages, social metrics, jersey sales. To them, Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback, he's market momentum. Win or lose, he makes Cleveland relevant. Caught in the middle, the players, tired of slogans, ready for anyone to pick a direction and mean it. From a distance, you'd never know how severe the split feels. Public remarks stay polite. Every interview ends with a canned, "We trust the process." But inside, trust is exactly what's missing. Because when a locker room senses misalignment above it, confidence evaporates. Veterans start comparing notes, which message came from the coach, which came from upstairs, which contradicts both. A wide receiver might hear, "Be patient, chemistry takes time." A young defender gets told, "Stay ready, big changes are coming." Different truths inside the same week. That chaos doesn't scream, it hums quietly, eroding focus. Stefanski's reality is brutal. Every coach knows the league's unwritten rule. Win and you're a genius, lose and you're gone. He can't afford experiments. He's protecting not just a system, but his livelihood. So even if Sanders looks electric, even if the locker room buzzes, even if fans beg pulling the trigger on a rookie quarterback feels like playing chicken with his own job security. One bad stretch with the kid under center, and the narrative flips instantly. Coach loses team after reckless move. That's fear talking, but it's rational fear. He's tasted this market's impatience before. Every head coach in Cleveland has. Meanwhile, upstairs, the executives live inside a different ecosystem. They can survive a lost season if they sell hope. In their view, the only unforgivable sin is stagnation. Sanders represents motion youth, energy, clicks, headlines, a front office dream. In closed meetings, according to people familiar with the organization, the phrase long-term vision gets repeated like a chant. They remind themselves that legends are forged through rough starts, that rookies learn by stumbling. What they forget is that coaches don't get multi-year forgiveness for short-term losses. So they push optimism, while Stefanski counts what optimism costs. Then come the players, smaller voices in a very loud argument, but living the consequences daily. Receivers choose between loyalty to a struggling veteran who's respected in the room and fascination with a rookie whose deep ball makes practice feel alive again. Linemen juggle cadence changes depending on which quarterback's running the drill. Defensive leaders watch everything, silently gauging whether the offense believes the huddle commander. To them, this isn't philosophy, it's paychecks. Careers are short. Nobody wants to waste a prime year on indecision. The communication spiral tightens, coaching notes become guarded, front office leaks feed talk shows, players vent anonymously to local reporters who promise neutrality. Every faction claims to be above the noise, yet everyone contributes to it. And Stefanski, the chess player at the board's center, looks less like a strategist and more like a negotiator. Each week's game plan must satisfy analytics upstairs, temperament downstairs, and results on the field. It's impossible math. Slowly, you can see it wearing on him. Phrases once confident, "We have clarity. We're on the same page," sound thinner in press conferences now. His eyes betray calculation every time someone asks about the quarterback room. This isn't coaching, it's crisis management disguised as philosophy. If there's a single image that sums up the Browns right now, it's the sideline just before kickoff. Stefanski, headset on, scanning the field like a man reading between invisible lines. Gabriel, helmet buckled, jaw tight, gripping the football like a final chance. Sanders, standing behind both, focused but calm, absorbing everything while 60,000 people chant his name. 3 men representing 3 timelines. Each one believes he embodies the answer. Each one represents a question the franchise still won't answer out loud. Behind all the tension sits one cold statistical reality. The Browns are average. Not terrible, not elite, just stuck. The worst place a team can be, because mediocrity doesn't force decisions, it delays them. The safer choice feels just safe enough to justify inertia. Ownership points to analytics, coaches point to chemistry, and the fans point to the scoreboard. Week after week, everyone points somewhere else. Yet the longer this uncertainty lives, the faster momentum drains. Confidence is contagious, but so is doubt. So now the Browns face a paradox only sustained by fear. If they play the rookie and lose, the front office calls it growth while the coach gets fired. If they keep the veteran and lose, the front office looks cowardly, the locker room fractures, and the coach still gets fired. Every outcome costs someone their security. That's why it's starting to feel less like a season and more like a countdown to what nobody can say with certainty, but everyone senses it's coming. This is the quiet war inside professional sports. The friction between now and next. The coach protects the scoreboard, the executives protect the storyline. One written in pixels, the other written in wins. And somewhere among the power plays sits a group of players running gassers, watching rumors on their phones, wondering whether the leadership above them remembers that football, ultimately, is still played on grass, not in optics. Cleveland's story isn't unique. Many teams face this crossroads. What makes it explosive here is history, the endless repetitions of promise followed by panic. Every generation of Browns football has crashed against the same paradox, chasing vision without alignment. Now it's happening again, only this time under brighter lights and louder hashtags. And until someone inside the building finally says the words the fans have been screaming, "Pick a direction," Cleveland will keep spinning in circles, torn between potential and pragmatism, the future they keep selling and the present they keep surviving. Because you can split a playbook. You can't split a purpose.